Shalom, shalom, Yashra'al. Welcome again to Watchmen of the Faith Ministries. My name is CHODASH. Now, the title of today's show is going to be called The Head of the Month. All right? Now, the word month is also associated with the word moon. And I'm going to break that down in detail as we go along, all right, with the class. Now, this would just simply mean, all right, in our Hebrew language, all right, either Resh, Rosh, or Rash. Like I said in the other show that I did, I'm more comfortable with the word Rash, CHODASH, and have the E here in parentheses. And what I'll do at a later date, I get into why I believe that it should be Rash instead of Resh and Rosh. But we get into that a little bit later on, okay, as we start to go into a lot of the pronunciations of a lot of these Hebrew words. Now, first and foremost, I want to give thanks to the Father Yahuwah and to the Son Yahusha and to the nation of Yashra'al for having patience with me in trying to put up this video here, because I've been having a lot of error problems, okay, with the volume. All right, so we're gonna keep our we're gonna pray to the Father that everything goes nice and smooth and we have no error problems today. All right, now let's get this off the board here, and we're gonna go ahead with the lesson. And we're gonna make sure that we go. I'm gonna make sure I go over this lesson real thorough, because there's a whole lot of information that I need to bring out that's going to answer the question, according to my research that I've done, whether we should be observing the first sliver or the astronomical new moon. All right. That's the topic of debate today, whether we should be following the astronomical moon or the first sliver as the new moon. All right, and like I said, there's a lot of teachings out there on which moon to follow, and let's see how far we'll get with this lesson today, because I believe it's the first sliver. All right, just go ahead and let you know that right off the bat. Now, the basis to understanding why I say it's the first sliver, I did in the previous show that there's only 30 days, all right, in a month. In the moon cycle, there's only 30 days. And what I just simply did was this. I said there's 30 days, all right, in a month. And that there's only 12 months in a year. And what I simply did, using this mathematical equation here, is that 30 times 12 gives us 360. This 360 is letting us know now that there's only 360 days in a lunar year. 360. There can never be 390 days in a lunar year. And the word lunar is associated with the word moon. Now, this is one mathematical equation, and this is going to be basically the whole format that you see me use throughout this show today. That there's 30 days in a month, 12 months in a year, and 360 days, okay, in a year. So, in a lunar year. So these three numbers here is going to be very important. Now, the next mathematical equation that I want to bring out is, with the understanding now that there's only 30 days in a month, all right, and the punishment that was given to the nation of Yashra'al for not observing the land Shabbats, all right, and the Jubilees, Southern Kingdom went under captivity, or went into captivity under the Babylonians for 70 years. Excuse me, just 360. 360 days in a year, all right, times 70 years captivity amongst the Babylonians. And when you do the mathematical equation on this here, 360 days in a year times 70 years gives us 25,200 days. All right. So this simply means here now is that with the understanding there's 360 days in a year times 70 years of captivity, there are 25,000 200 days in 70 years. All right? We'll move to the side a little bit here. I'm going to explain that again. There are 25,200 days in 70 years. And like I said earlier, the mathematical equation I'm going to be using today is based on the numbers 30, 12, and 360. So this is just another way of looking at it. Another mathematical equation I'm going to be using now is that, like I said, now there's only 30 days in a lunar month. And we're going to divide that now by 25,200 days. And that gives us now 840 months. All right? So this simply says now that there are 840 months in 25,200 days. And again, I'm using the same mathematical equation here. I'm using the 30, I'm using the 12, and I'm using the 360. Now let me erase some of this here. All right? Because I have one more mathematical equation to bring out, so we can try to get some clarity on this. Because if we can understand how many days there are in a month and how many days there are in a lunar year, it would definitely help us in understanding Yahuwah's count. All right, that's going to be very important, Yahuwah's count, because these are appointments, and we just want to make sure that the bride is prepared when the groom returns. Now, there are 12 months. There are 12 months, or 12 lunar months in a year. All right, 12 months. And we're going to divide that by 840. And we just simply do that. 12 goes into 84. 7 times 12 times 7 gives us 84. Okay, and we just bring up the 0, bring down the 0. So 12 times 70 would give us 840. So what I just simply did again, I'm just using these numbers that can never change. We have 70 years, all right, 70 years where we were using a 12-month count. We have 70 years where we were using a 30-day count in a month. All right, 30 days in a month, and this cycle was used on a consecutive basis for 70 years. And that's going to be very, very important, because there's also a teaching out there about a molad, M-O-L-A-D, a molad. The word molad means birth, and I'm going to get into that because the months don't fluctuate. All right? The months don't fluctuate where you have the way that the Gregorian calendar has it. The Gregorian calendar is basically a solar calendar. All right? A solar calendar. And we're going to go into detail about that whole situation there, because with the Gregorian calendar, they have the calendar set up where some months there are 30 days, some months there are 31 days, and some months there are 29 and even 28 days. All right, so according to scripture, that's not possible. All right, it's a consecutive count of 30 days in a lunar cycle. All right, and that's basically about the end of the discussion with that there. But what I want to do now is go to my first scripture. All right, I want to go to the book of Bereshit, the first chapter. All right, and I just want to read verses 4, let's see, 4 and 5, excuse me, read verses 4 through 8. All right, I just want to establish something first right quick. And Elohim saw the light that it was good. And Elohim divided the light from the darkness. And Elohim called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. And Elohim said, let there be firmaments in the midst of the Shamayim. Excuse me, not the Shamayim, but the Mayim. Mayim is water. And let it divide the Mayims from the waters from the waters. And Elohim made the firmament and divided the Mayim, which were under the firmament, from the Mayim, which were under the firmament, and it was so. And Elohim called the firmament Shamayim, and the evening and the morning were the second day. So what we have here now is very interesting, is that we see now the establishment of a 24-hour period, all right? There's 12 hours of your night hours, what we call your shadow hours, and there's 12 hours for the most part now, because this does vary. But, you know, just speaking in general terms, and then we have our morning hours, or our daylight hours. So that's going to be very important. So we should be able to see from the book of Bereshit, verses 4 through 5, we see now where the days are divided, and the days are divided into 24-hour periods. That's going to be very important. Now, let's go to verse 14. Let's skip down a little bit, which is going to be very important. And Elohim said, let there be lights in the firmament of the Shamayims to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years. Now, we have a situation now where the 24-hour period had already began in verse 4, when we see now the dividing of the day and the dividing of the night. And it said the evening and the morning were the first day. So we know now that the day starts with the evening first, the nighttime or the shadow hours first, and then that brings us on around to the daylight portion of the day. But what's interesting with verse 14 now is that it's talking about two lights. We're talking about a greater light and a lesser light. That greater light will be the sun, okay? Will be the sun. And that word sun in Hebrew is just shamash. All right, shamash. And the lesser light would be the moon. And the word moon in Hebrew would be, I'm going to leave it basic for now, okay? It would be CHODASH or CHODASH. All right? But what I found interesting about, listen, let's do it this way. Let's go into, let's see here. Let's go into the definition of some of these words here. First of all, it tells us that both the sun and the moon are going to be for signs. All right? Signs. The word signs in Hebrew is the word uth. All right? Uth. And that's the Strong's number, what do we have here? That's the Strong's number 226. 226, all right? Let's read that right quick, because we're talking about now whether we're looking at the first sliver or the darkness of the moon. So we have 226. The word is uth. From 225, it means to ascent. All right? To ascent. 226, uth. From 225, the sense of appearing. All right? The sense of appearing. And so now, when we see the two dark stages of the moon, we're talking about the sense of appearing. After the two dark stages are complete, the first reappearance of the moon would be the first sliver. So we're definitely supposed to be looking for the first sliver based on the definition alone. The word ascent means the sense of appearing. When the moon is in its dark stages, those 2 days there, it's not visual to the naked eye. It is there, but it doesn't fit the description of the sense of appearing. So this is one of the reasons why I say, based on the information that I've gathered now, is that it's the first sliver based on the definition alone. Read a little bit more. The sense of appearing, a signal, as a flag, a beacon, a monument, a omen, a prodigy, evidence, a mark, a miracle, a sign, or a token. All right, that's going to be very important. Now, let's go to another word or scripture here. Let's go to Devarim. Devarim, the 16th chapter. Let's see if we can get some more clarity on the situation here. Devarim, the 16th chapter, read verse 1. It says, observe the month of Abib, and keep the Pesach unto Elohim thy mighty one. For in the month of Abib, Elohim thy mighty one brought thee forth out of Mizraim by night. So that word observed is actually associated with the word uth. We're looking for a sign or a signal that's coming out of the dark stage of the moon. Now the Strong's concordance number for that would be 8104. All right, 8104. One second here. Make sure everything is nice and tight. 8104. And the word that we're going to be looking at is the word is observe. 8104. Here we are right here. 8104. The Hebrew word is shamar. The word shamar means to hedge about, to guard, beware, be circumspect, to take heed, to keep, to mark, to look, narrowly observe, preserve, regard, reserve, save, to be sure, to wait, or to watch. So this is what we're supposed to be doing now. We're supposed to be watching for, all right, the first sliver, because this is all associated now with the, we're looking for the appearance or the sense of appearing of the moon. And once the moon completes its 2 dark stages, we're now looking for the appearance of the first sliver. All right. Now, another word that I want us to look at in regard to Bereshit is the word moed. All right, the word moed. And that's the Strong's number 4150. All right, 4150. 4150. The word is moed from 3259. A fixed time or season, a festival, conventionally a year, an assembly, the congregation. It has a sign, an appointed sign, an appointed time, an assembly, a solemn feast, an appointment, a season, a time, an appointment. So now we see that everything is falling in line when we read the book of Bereshit 1 through 14. I'm going to read it one more time. It says, and Elohim said, let there be lights in the firmament of the Shamayim. And these lights is referring to the sun and the moon. In the firmament of the heavens, to divide the day from the night, and let them, meaning the sun and the moon. So the sun is going to be for a sign, seasons, days, and years. This is going to be the function of the sun based on the word them. The word them is plural. Now also now, the moon is going to be for signs and for seasons and for days, and for years. Now, what we should also be getting out of, what we should also be getting out of verse 14, being that the sun, okay, being that the sun is for signs, it's a sign, seasons, days, and for years. Okay? What this brings us to is that we're talking about now, draw this diagram here. All right? This line that I'm drawing here is going to be the equator. All right? This is going to be the sun. This is the North Pole. All right? This is the South Pole. On top here we have the vernal equinox. This is what's going on in the book of Bereshit, verses chapter 1, verse 14. The sign that the sun is telling us now is that there's a vernal equinox, there's a summer solstice. A summer solstice. There's an autumn equinox. And then finally we have what we call the winter, okay, solstice. And here, for example, we would have the Earth, okay, as it's making its rotation. And we know the way that we have it, it would be like counterclockwise. All right? So what's interesting about the vernal equinox, and the word equinox just simply means equal or even, where we would then at this point, if you used to draw a direct line going straight down the middle, everything is in proper alignment. We have now 12 hours, all right, of shadow hours, and we have 12 hours of daylight hours. That's what the word equinox means. And the vernal equinox usually happens around March the 21st, March the 22nd, somewhere around that time, which is very interesting because it puts us around the time of Pesach, which is Passover. Then we have the summer solstice. The summer solstice happens in June, around June the 21st, June the 22nd, the beginning of the summer. Then we have the autumn equinox, which happens 6 months later from the vernal equinox. All right. Now, if the vernal equinox happens in March, we would have March, April, May, June, July, August, around late September. All right. So we have here the beginning of the fall season. All right. Now, the fall season with us lets us know now that this is the 7th month. The 7th month. Just like right now, the way that we, the situation that we're in now, if we're following the Gregorian calendar has us at the 9th month. But in actuality, when we look at this from a Hebraic perspective, in a Hebrew calendar, this is actually the 7th month. All right? The 7th month. And within the 7th month, in the 7th month, we have Yom Teruah, we have Yom Kippur, we have the Feast of Sukkot, ending with Shemini Atzeret, which happens in the 8th day. All right? Then after that, we have the winter solstice. The winter solstice happens around December the 21st, December the 22nd. So you could draw a straight line down here, okay, giving us your equinoxes. And if you draw a line from either right to left or left to right, we have your solstice period. What's interesting also with this look here and helping us to understand that even the sun, okay, is a sign, and understanding what the sun is trying to tell us. The sun has a circuit. When we go to the book of Tehillim, which is the book of Psalms 104, verses 6 through 8, it talks about a very important word that we should also include in our vocabulary, is a Hebrew word, tekufah. And like I said before, we'll get into the pronunciation of these words a little bit later on, but I say takufah. All right, I'm not, observing the and this F should be actually a PH. All right, so this word tekufah is associated in the book of Tehillim 104 with the sun. And this is the sun, all right, doing this thing across the equator. And also what's interesting too, the way that Yahuwah has everything set up, is that in the sun's rotation, when it's doing its business, when it's going across the equator, when the earth, okay, is closest to the sun, all right, when the earth is closest to the sun, it's at its coldest point. Again, when the earth is closest to the sun, is at its coldest point. When the earth is furthest away from the sun, is at its hottest point. That's very important for us to understand, all right? So, I'm just going to erase this here. Just wanted to make sure that we understand exactly what's going on here, because all of the hosts of the heavens are trying to relay a message to us, which is going to give us a better understanding on how to look at this whole picture from a Hebraic perspective and not from a Gentile Western perspective. All right? There was no such thing as a Gregorian calendar during the days of our ancient forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. No such thing as a Gregorian calendar, so we have to find out now what calendar they were using. And also I want to bring to the plate is that, let me just go to the scriptures on that, because there was a time when this was basic elementary information. Let's go into the book of Josephus, all right, a little bit here, and get some more information on celestial science, all right? Celestial science. I'm going to be reading from a book called The Antiquity of the Jews by Josephus. And let's see, I'm going to be reading from page 32, chapter 7. This is line on verse 2. It says, Berosus mentions our father Abram without naming him, when he says this: in the 10th generation after the flood, there was among the Chaldeans is the Babylonians, all right? Amongst them lived a man who was righteous, great and skillful in the celestial science, all right? So that's very important, because and the reason why I'm bringing this out is because I want it to be understood that, again, there was a time when we knew this. But being that we broke away from the laws, statutes, and commandments, and we started to follow the other nations, all of this stuff now seems foreign to us. Because there's also a teaching amongst us is that following the first sliver of the moon is Babylonian. But if you look at that sliver, okay, that they use amongst the Babylonians, that's not the first sliver of the moon. And they also have it attached to Taurus the bull, because they went into idol worshiping. But I get involved in that a little bit later on, all right? But again, that sliver that you see with Taurus the bull, if you see some of these Babylonian pictures, that is the waning part of the moon, but it's not the first crescent. And again, is attached to the bull. All right, so that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm not talking about Taurus the bull. I'm talking about the first sliver. Now, let's go to some more scriptures on backing this information up where we once knew this. We're going to go to the book of Ecclesiastes. All right, Ecclesiastes. And I'm going to read chapter 3. And I'm going to read down to chapter 1, let's go to verse, I'm going to read down a little bit, all right? It says, to everything there is a season. And the word season is very important. Now, to everything there is a season, and to every purpose under the heaven, and a time for every purpose under the heaven. A time to be born, a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to pluck up that which is planted. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to break down, and a time to build up. Excuse me. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones, and a time to gather stones. A time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to get, a time to lose. A time to keep, and a time to cast away. A time to rent, and a time to sow. A time to keep silence, and a time to speak. So again, the reason why I brought this out is because everything is done at its set appointed time. And it is our responsibility as brides preparing for the meeting of the groom that we understand that there's a set appointed time for every single thing. All right, for everything. Let's go to one more scripture here. Let's go to the Apocrypha, and I'm going to go to the Wisdom of Solomon. All right, the 7th chapter. I'm going to read verses 16 to 21. Again, just proving a point that there was a time when we knew this information. We knew where the North Star was at. We understood the Big Dipper. We understood the Little Dipper. Some real heavy stuff. But again, because of our disobedience, we lost a lot of this information here. It says, for in Yahuwah's hands are both we and our words. All wisdom also, and knowledge of workmanship. For Yahuwah hath given me, which is Solomon, certain knowledge of the things that are namely to know how the world was made, which is very important, and the operation of the elements. So all these things is very, very important. We have our hydrogen, we have our oxygen, we have neon, we have krypton, we have the smallest parts of our atoms, when we get into the quarks, the biaps, the zeelis, when we understand now triple darkness. All these things is going to be very important in helping us to get a better understanding on how to read, okay, the host of heavens, understanding the Father's handiwork, because this should now put us in a better position in understanding and appreciating how the world was made by our Father and by the name of Yahuwah. All right. Solomon had the understanding of the operation of the elements. Solomon had the understanding of the beginning, the ending, and midst of the times, the alterations of the turning of the sun. And I brought out the word tekufah, which tells us now about the turning or the circuit of the sun, and the change of seasons. And I broke down now the whole situation about the equinoxes, all right, and the winter and the summer solstice. All of this is very, very important in helping us to understand that there's only 30 days in a month, 360 days in a lunar year, all right, a lunar year. And I'll go ahead and let the the cat out of the bag now, as they say, is that there's 365 days in a solar year. So there's a solar count and there's a lunar count. So we have to be very mindful of that so we won't get the two mixed up. Verse 19, the circuits of years and the position of stars. And I just find verse 19 very interesting, like I've said before, on how Harriet Tubman now was able to move over 3,000 slaves, all right, from the south to the north. And she was able to do that by simply understanding the motion of the sun, the moon, and the stars, all right? The Big Dipper, the Little Dipper, all right, Taurus, and also, again, the North Star. These things is very important with Harriet Tubman now bringing the slaves from the south to the north. Verse 20. Solomon also had the understanding of the natures of living creatures and the fury of wild beasts, the violence of winds, and the reasonings of men. All right? The diversity of plants and the virtues of roots. Solomon said, all such things as are either secret or manifest, them I know. All right? Because Solomon was a wise brother. All right? He started off very good, but he fell off track, later on in life. But what was interesting now, is that Solomon asked, before anything, the wisdom, the knowledge, and the understanding on how to govern the nation of Israel. And being that he has such a humble heart, the father added other things also with him. But first he took the low road and he asked for an understanding or overstanding heart to govern the nation of Israel. All right? Now, what I want to do next is we're going to be going to the book of Shemot, all right? The 12th chapter, verses 1 to 2. But first, what I want to do is draw another diagram. All right. Now, the rotation isn't circular, but just for argument's sake, I'm going to draw it circular just so that we can get a better understanding of what's going on here. All right. We have the dark stage of the moon. We have the first quarter. All right. We have the full moon, and we have the third quarter. All right, and we have the Arats, which is the earth. Arats, with a little Z in there. All right, and here we will have the Shamash. Shamash, all right, which would be the sun, and the moon would be, we're gonna call this. This is the dark stage of the moon, which is CHODASH. What's interesting about this now is that from the dark stage of the moon to the first quarter is going to take 7.5 days. All right, 7.5 days. From the first quarter to the full moon takes 7.5 days. All right. From the full moon to the third quarter takes another 7.5 days. From the third quarter back to the dark stage of the moon again brings us now another 7.5 days. It's simple arithmetic. You can use that formula or you can use multiplication. But I have a little room here. I'm just going to simply do 7 plus 7 4 times, all right? Because we have 1, 2, 3, 4. The 4 sevens plus the halves. We have 4 halves. 7 times 7 is 28. Or 7 plus 7, 4 times to give you 28. And 2 halves equal a whole. 2 halves equal a whole. We add up those 2 halves there. 28 plus 2 gives you 30. All right? So this is a 30-day cycle for the moon. 30-day cycle. And again, what's interesting now is that from the dark stage of the moon to the first quarter, all of this on top is called a waxing period. This is the waxing crescent. All right. From the first quarter to the full moon, this is called the waxing gibbous. Gibbous, all right? Now, from the full moon to the third quarter, this period would be called the waning gibbous. From the third quarter to the darkness of the moon again, this would be called the waning crescent. All right? The waning crescent. So it's just interesting to know now, the 30th day can also be the first day. After the 30th day comes the first day. And the first day that we'll be looking for now will be the first sliver. Now let's go to some scriptures, all right, to back this up. And we're going to go to the book of Shemot. The book of Shemot, which is, let's go to the 12th chapter and get some clarity on this here. I'm going to read verses 1 through 2. And Elohim spoke to Moshe and Aharon in the land of Mizraim, saying, this moon. When it says here, this moon, it implies something that you can see. Because if it's covered, all right, it is there, but it's not visual to the eye. And like when I broke down the word oof, the word oof is pertaining to a sense of appearing. All right, a sense of appearing. So when it says this moon, these four major, points of the moon, what we should be looking at after the two dark stages would be the first crescent. So that word, this moon, is going to be important to the point where it's making a reference now to something that you can visually see. So now, this moon shall be unto you the beginning of months. It should be the resh, or the reshit. The resh or the reshit. I think I have a little room here. I'm going to write this down here. The word resh means head. The word reshit means beginning. All right? Means beginning. So if we was to read verse 2 again, this is what it says. This moon shall be the reshit of moons. It shall be the first month of the year to you. So when it says it should be the first month of the year to you, this is talking about the lunar count, which is 360 days. All right? The lunar count, not the solar year. The solar year starts at 365 days is a solar year. 360 days, all right, is a lunar year, which is going to be very important. Now, let me erase this. And I just will go over this part again right quick. This last little, these two Hebrew words. The word resh is head, and the word reshit means the beginning. And what we were told to do was to watch the resh, or the head of the moon. And that's going to be very important. And I want to show a quick picture, all right, explaining exactly what that means when it says the head of the month. All right? The head of the month. All right, just make sure everything is nice and clean and dry. We're almost done here. All right, so now we're still in Exodus. We're still in Exodus, the 12th chapter, going over verse 1 and 2. And there's a very important word that's in there that we can't overlook. which is going to bring a whole lot of clarity on whether or not we should be observing the darkness of the moon or the first sliver. Now, that word resh is so important because in the Hebrew, that word resh in the Ezra script looks like this. That would be the resh. Now, when you look at that from the picture graph, it actually shows now the picture of a head. We draw the picture of the head. This is what it looks like. All right? It shows a picture of the head. So what we're asked to do now, all right, this is resh. It means head. We're asked now to look at the head of the month. And after the moon goes through its usual 2 dark stages, what we're looking for now is the head of the month. And the head would be the first sliver. All right, the first sliver. Because again, there's more than one way, okay, of reading scripture. Mathematics, that's a form of communication. Pictographs, that's also a form of communication. The alphabet, that's a form of communication. And word writing is what we have now is another form of communication. But again, this is the resh. All right. And the word resh in the pictograph shows a picture of the head. And we're asked to look at the head of the month. The head of the month after the 2 dark stages again would be the first sliver. That would be the head. That would be the head. Now, what's also interesting, let's go to the book of, now there's another scripture I want to go to help bring some clarity with this. Let's go to Bamidbar, which is the book of Numbers, the 29th chapter, verse 1. It says now, and in the 7th month, which is the month that we're into now, the 7th month, on the first day of the month, you should have an holy convocation. You should do no servile work therein. All right, because we just went through that last, I think it was last Tuesday evening. We had the Yom Teruah. But what I found interesting with verse chapter 29 is that it also talks about the first day of the month. So again, in order to understand when the seventh, excuse me, not the 7th day of the month, but the 7th month, the seventh day of the month. But the 7th month, the only way that we can establish, get an understanding of when the 7th month is, we have to first understand when is the first month. So observing the moon is very, very important, okay? We're not worshiping the moon, we're observing the moon so that we can keep a calendar count of the time, all right? Now, what I also want to go into a little bit is a very interesting character. His name is Halil. All right, Halil. I'm going to write his name down here on the board. All right. His name is Halil. Hillel, and this is Halil II. Halil II was responsible for putting together what we call a diaspora calendar or exile calendar. And him, along with other religious leaders that they call the Beit Din, they were the ones that were responsible for this calendar. And what they would do now is that they said that being that the children of Yashra'al were no longer in the land and they couldn't observe the barley, okay, because that's another strong indication of when the spring begins. And let me say it this way. In the book of Leviticus, okay, the 23rd chapter, Wa'ikra, the 23rd chapter, it talks about the 18th. Israel was not supposed to take part of the agricultural season until the priests would wave the barley. So the agricultural season where Israel can now enjoy the spring, didn't happen until the priest waved the barley. The barley had to be waved first, all right? So Hillel was responsible for adding, in a 19-year cycle, he was responsible for coming up with a calendar or a system where they added a mulad or a new month, an extra month, or a second Adar in the 3rd year, in the 6th year, in the 8th year, in the 11th year, in the 14th year, in the 17th year, in the 19th year. All right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In a 19-year cycle. All right? Again, this was done by Hillel II, along with the Beit Din, the religious leaders, because they said that the reason why they had this this formula is because they wanted to make sure, okay, that Pesach never happened, okay, in the dead of the winter. Because in order to properly have a Passover or Pesach, you have to make sure that the barley would be ready on the 18th. All right, the barley has to be ready. If the barley's not going to be ready, how are you going to wave the sheaf offering? The sheaf offering has to be waved. But my argument now with this system is that it's not supported in Scripture. All right, when we go to the book of Devarim, the 4th chapter, the 2nd verse, it clearly tells us that we need to be extremely careful about certain things. Devarim, chapter 4, verse 2, says, "You shall not add unto the Devarim or the word which I command you, neither shall you diminish aught from it, that you may keep the mitzvah of Elohim, your mighty one, which I command you." All right? So again, it is very important that we don't add, okay, to any of the words of the instructions that was originally given to us. Even when you go to the book of Revelation, we also see that this can be a very serious crime by adding and taking away from the words of Yahuwah. 22 verses 18 to 19. "For I testify unto every man that heareth the words of the prophecy of this book, if any man should add unto these things, Elohim shall add unto him the plagues that are written in this book. And if any man should take away from the words of the book of this prophecy, Elohim shall take away his part out of the book of life and out of the holy city and from the things which are written in this book." So we have to be very careful about adding, all right? Like I said earlier, there are 360 days in the lunar year, all right? And there's 365 days in the solar year. Only thing that we would have to do is to be patient. Because what was going on when I was getting in contact with a lot of other brothers, when I asked them to look at the book of Shemot, the 12th chapter, verses 1 through 2, I asked them, when does the new year begin? And a lot of brothers were saying, listen, the new year begins in the month of Aviv at the end of the lunar moon cycle. But you can't do that because those are two separate times. Only thing that we would have to do, again, is to be patient, and when the 360 day count is over, we just wait 5 more days. Okay? 5 more days, okay, into now the new lunar moon count, we would have now, all right, our new year. Excuse me, not a new year, but a new solar year, all right, a new solar year. So that's very important. The only thing we have to do is wait, because again, 360 days in a lunar year, and there's 365 days in a solar year. So when the lunar year turns, let the count begin all over again, and then 5 days later we will have the solar count, when everything should run in proper order. Proper order. And like I said before, I just find it interesting that, because we as mere humans, we like to touch and dabble with everything. And so now that we have the sun, the moon, and the stars up in the Shamayims, all right, it's far away from man now so that we won't touch it, all right? We don't need to add, on daylight saving times and all that stuff like that. We can't find that in the scripture, all right? We can't find those things in the scripture. Let's keep things in accordance to the way that Yahuwah set it up from the very beginning, all right? We're in enough trouble as it is, always trying to tweak this, tweak that. We don't need to do any tweaking, all right? Only tweaking, if any tweaking needs to be done, is ourselves and making sure that we're ready when the groom comes, all right? So let me get rid of this right quick, all right? And there's a whole lot more information to this, but I just want to keep it plain and simple, all right? There was a whole Sanhedrin breakdown to this. But again, I will be up here for like another 2 hours. And I just want to keep the thing nice and simple. All right, just get the basic understanding. And if there's any questions with anything, please just give me a message, a message through the inbox, and we can talk about it like ladies and gentlemen. All right, simple as that. Now, what's also interesting is that Hillel II, okay, around the 4th century, and the Beit Din, what they did now is that they observed the new year in the 7th month. But you can't observe, the new year in the 7th month. You should be observing the new year in the month of Aviv, okay? Or Abib, A-B-I-B, Abib, not Aviv, Abib. And because the way that they have it now is that they have like the turn of the year, and I get into the turn of the year, which is mentioned in the 7th month. But we're talking about an agricultural season, so we'll get into that because the 7th month, is a rainy season where we will begin planting our vegetation in preparation now for the spring season. But what the Beit Din did in Hillel is that in the 7th month they said that the new year for them could not start on a Sunday, a Wednesday, and a Friday. And if we notice what's interesting about Sunday is that Sunday is the first day of the week. And from Friday sundown to Saturday sundown is the Shabbat. So they didn't want it to run 2 days consecutive, okay, where there were days off. And understanding what's going on in the book of, what is that, Shemot, the 12th chapter, we have the preparation on how to do Passover, where we have the 10th, which is where we select the lamb. We have the 14th, and between the 2 evenings is when we killed the lamb. And on the 15th, nighttime, is when we had Pesach. And then on the 18th, which would have been on a Wednesday, okay, we have the death of Yahusha. On the 18th, we have the waving of the sheaf offering. All right, I just want to make sure that's clear. On the 14th was the death of Yahusha, okay? He resurrected on the 17th. And on the 18th, we have the waving of the sheaf. The priest did it, but that priest was alluding to the Kohen Gadol, the high priest Yahusha. He was the one that was going to actually wave the sheaf. And so now with that understanding, all right, that Wednesday, they don't do it because, of the resurrection. All right, so again, the Beit Din and the Hillel II, they had a whole lot of things going on, but they didn't do it again on a Sunday, a Wednesday, and a Friday. All right, Sunday, Wednesday, and a Friday. Now, what I also want to touch on is I've seen a lot of teachings where instead of people having the understanding that there's 30 days in a month, they say that there's 29 days okay, 12 hours and 700, let me put some commas here, 793 parts. All right. And so what I wanted to do now is to figure out what does this actually mean? Because we have the day, we have the hour, and we have the parts. What we want to do now is find out how many parts are in, okay, a minute. And there are 18 parts in a minute. So if there's 18 parts in a minute, we need to know how many parts are in an hour. So we just simply do 60. All right, we have 0, 0, 48. So there are 1,080 parts in an hour. And so we just simply do now 18 into 793. And that goes 4 times. 18 times 4 is 72. With 7 left over, bring down your 3. 18 goes into 73. Again, 4 times, which is 72, with 1 left over. So this is actually 29 days, 12 hours, and 44 minutes. 44 minutes with 1 part left over. And there's 18 parts, okay, in a minute. 18 parts in a minute. All right, so I'll leave that up for a minute. You can take a good look at that. All right. Now, let me go ahead and erase this. We're just about done here. All right, just about done. Just about done. Finish this up. Now, we had talked about that word RASH CHODASH. All right, RASH CHODASH. That word Kodesh is going to be very interesting because that's not the only word that means moon. All right, that's not the only word that means moon. But that word Kodesh means the sense of appearing. And that word appearing is going to be very interesting. Because if something is appearing, that means that you can see it. All right, you can visually see it. Now, the word is Yashra'al. Yashra'al. And Yashra'al is the Strong's Concordance number 3394. All right, let's go to that real quick. 3394. Yashra'al. 3394. The same as 3391, it means the moon. 3391, Yashra'al, from an unused word, root, or uncertain significance, a lunation, and it also means month or moon. Now, another word that I want to look up is 3383. Okay, because what I want to look at, that word is the word, what's it, Yardin. Yardin. The word Yardin. And the word Yardin is actually Jordan. And this root word yar is going to be very important. Again, 383, to go downward, conventionally to a lower region, to fall, to get down, to hang down, to let down, light down, put down, run down, to sink, to subdue, or take down. So this word yar here is talking about where the yar is descending. Okay, that root word, which is important, is descending. Now the other word is Laban. Laban, which also means moon, but it means the white moon. The white moon. All right? And the Strong's Concordance number to that is 3842. 3842. All right? Let's get the definition for that. 3842. Lebanon. Okay, or we can say Lebanon. From a brick from the whiteness of the clay. And that's 3842. We can also look at 3835, Laban, a prime root to be or become white. Be made white. Laban, from 3835, white. So this word is another word, Laban's another word for moon, and it means white, and it's the Strong's number 3842. Now, what I also found interesting now is just two more scriptures here. Is with the darkness of the moon. Let's see how this relates now to Yahusha. How does the moon cycle relate to Yahusha? HaMashiach, the groom of the bride, who the Father sent to bring the children of Yashra'al back in covenant relationship. All right? Because like I always say, you can't separate the Father from the Son. The Son and the Father are in agreement with the Torah. And that's the way that's supposed to be with the nation of Yashra'al, where we're supposed to be inseparable. All right, we're all one. Now, let's go to the book of John. The book of John, let's go to the first chapter. I'm going to read verse 5 and 14. And we're going to see how this relates to, again, the moon. It says, in him, which was Yahusha, was life, and the life was the light of men. So if we was to look at it this way, prior to Yahusha coming on the scene, the world was in a state of darkness prior to him coming. Now when the Word was made flesh and it tabernacled amongst us, we now see something coming out of the darkness. And that something that was coming out of the darkness was light. And that light, or that or, is representing Yahusha. I'm going to read it again. In him, which was Yahusha, was life, and the life was the light, L-I-G-H-T, or the or, because it talks about the light even in the book of Bereshit. Because remember, it talked about now there was a chaotic stage at the very beginning, a darkness. And it made mention of a Hebrew word. I didn't bring it out, but the word is or. All right, O-W-R or O-R. It means light. And this light is also understanding. I get into that a little bit later. Now, if we go to verse 14 to help support this, it says now, and the Word, because we know that this Word was the light. And this Word was made flesh, and the Word was Yahusha. And the Word was made flesh and tabernacled amongst us. And we beheld his glory, the glory as the only begotten of Yahuwah, full of grace and truth. Let's go to 1 John. Again, let's go to verse 9. Excuse me, chapter 9, verse 5. This is how it's recorded, and I'm going to explain it. And again, this is in reference to the darkness of the moon. Yahusha said, as long as I am, and not I am is, okay, the same I am, okay, that was back in Exodus, who Moshe spoke to at the mount. All right, that I am is Yahusha. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. The light. So the light is very important. And then again, the light, okay, that's coming out of the darkness is representing, all right, Yahusha. So we're looking at the first sliver here. One more quick diagram and we'll be done. All right. Let's see now how the moon, okay, even relates to the nation of Yashra'al. Again, we have the earth. Okay, we have the the darkness of the moon. We have the first quarter. We have the full moon, and we have the third quarter. Now, let's look at it this way, from a Hebraic perspective, a little bit, to get a better understanding of what's going on. Abram, all right, Abraham was the birth, okay, of the nation of Israel. He was the father, as we already know from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Abraham will represent this first sliver or this darkness to now the light stage. But from this dark period to the full moon, we know that this is 15 days. All right? But also from Abraham, this is going to represent Abraham. From Abraham to Solomon, and there's no such thing as a coincidence, it's 15 generations. And it's also 15 days apart. Because again, we have 7.5 days to get to the first quarter. And for the first quarter to the full moon, it's another 7.5 days. Which gives us now 15 days. But it's also 15 generations from Abraham to Solomon. All right, 15 generations. And when we look at, again, this top portion here, that would be considered, okay, our waxing period. That's our waxing period. But what's interesting now is that Israel, Yashra'al, reached her zenith at the fullness of the moon during King Solomon's reign. Because after the death of King Solomon, we had the nation of Israel being split in two, with northern kingdom and southern kingdom. Now, with Solomon back into Zedekiah, which was the last king of southern kingdom, is also 15 generations. So we have 15 generations from Abraham to Solomon, and we have 15 generations from Solomon to Zedekiah. 15 generations plus 15 generations is 30 generations. The same way that there are 30 days in a month. But what's interesting now, that being that Solomon died, and we had a situation with Jeroboam and Rehoboam, Israel began to fall. So from this period to this period is called the waning period. Again, the waning period. Israel began to fall. We got worse. And so now we're into this dark stage, and we're waiting for that first sliver, okay, Yahusha to return through the orders of Yahuwah to bring light or understanding back into the world again. All right? And Yashra'al, that's about it. Okay? And I pray that this lesson has been a blessing. All right? And there's no interruptions with the volume or anything like that, and that you're able to get something out of this this lesson here. And in advance, I want to say I pray that everybody commemorates Wednesday Wednesday sundown. Wednesday sundown when we observe Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement. All right, and I just pray that everybody is well, stay in the spirit. This won't be long now, and we'll be out of this this captivity here. And with that, brothers and sisters, I'm going to say peace and blessings. All right, shalom, shalom, shalom.